So we have, when I checked this morning, just under 2,500 physician salary submissions. So that's really great. And we try to make it as easy as possible for a doctor to hop on the website and add a salary. So there's really just, it's kind of a three-page, kind of a three-step process. You go in there, there's no login required. We do ask for an email at the very end. But we really just collect about 10 to 12 data points in total.
Welcome to the Maha Marketing Podcast, where bold voices rise against the status quo. We champion functional medicine heroes fighting for real whole body health. These are the courageous men and women in your community taking on the institutional rot of our medical system. This podcast is your platform for purpose, integrity, and fearless strategy. Subscribe now and join the revolution in real health and authentic business.
And welcome to the Maha Marketing Podcast. I am super excited to introduce Tyler Polk, the founder of SalaryDoctor.com, a platform dedicated to bringing transparency to physician compensation. His initiative with SalaryDoctor.com reflects a commitment to addressing the lack of accessible salary data in the medical field. Tyler is contributing to a more informed and equitable healthcare industry, something we certainly all need. Tyler's work underscores the importance of accessible information in empowering physicians to advocate for themselves and make choices that align with their professional and personal goals. Tyler Polk, super happy to have you on here, man. How you doing?
Good, Paul. Thank you for having me. It's really great to have a platform to really discuss these important issues.
Yeah. Yeah, and as we were covering a little bit before it, mostly we get a lot of doctors that are disillusioned with the system coming in here. So when I found you on Twitter and saw the really incredible information that you're putting out there, I had to reach out to you and see if you would come on here and kind of give us a breakdown, because it seems like an absolutely incredible tool for doctors. So
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Twitter is really a very underrated platform when it comes to just connecting to people in the space, right? It's a very good platform to find other people that share a similar passion or interest, right? It's a great way to connect with people.
By far my favorite. For me, it goes X and then TikTok, and then the rest are like, meh.
Yeah.
All right. So what inspired you to build SalaryDoctor.com, SalaryDoctor.com? And what is kind of like that personal moment that lit that fire?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it all kind of began with my wife, I guess. So I am a proud and happy med spouse partner. And all that means is that I am a non-physician, but I'm married to a physician. And so about a few years ago, when we, or I should say she, was going through the residency match process, I really became disillusioned with how complicated and convoluted that process was. So, as a medical student, your fourth year, you typically go through many different rotations, right? You're trying to figure out what specialty you want to go into. And through this process, I did a lot of research online and I couldn't find a good platform to find out, better information about these residency programs. Are they toxic and malignant? Are they benign? Are they good? So I started a website called Review My Residency. So I'd done that for about 3 or 4 years now, got a ton of engagement, ton of traffic to the website. And over time, as we progressed through this medical career path, kind of the next question was, what about pay? What about compensation? And there wasn't really a great resource online for pay transparency. So, if you go into Google and you type in general surgeon salary, you'll get wildly different results based on what Google's feeding you. And it didn't really look very accurate, right? And so I sort of took the community that I already built with Review My Residency, and I took that email list, I kept them engaged, and I started thinking, what if we started talking about compensation for doctors? So that's really what kind of the kicking off point for that idea for Salary Doctor.
And how long has Salary Doctor been up?
So the website's been live for almost half a year, probably 3-4 months in total. But I'd been collecting salaries before that time using a Google spreadsheet.
So you're essentially you're compiling this information yourself. Were you surprised with kind of like the initial things that you were seeing from people, or because it's exciting? I mean, I've launched dozens, if not hundreds of websites. It's always exciting to get them out there, but to immediately see traffic, to immediately see engagement, to immediately see people, really valuing what you're putting out there, it must have felt great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's the most nerve-wracking point, right? Is when you finally like publish it or go live on the website. The big question is if you build it, will they come? Right? And so initially, there's a big spur of demand, and I think I built that up using, X or Twitter, the email newsletter, Reddit, things like that. But then after a big, kind of surge in data, it kind of went down and you start to wonder like, oh, was that it, right? Are people never going to come back to the website? So it's always a very kind of point of anxiety for me, right? Like after that first kind of initial launch, you build a lot of buzz, you get a ton of traffic, and then in my experience, it kind of trends off a little bit, but it's definitely come back.
That's awesome. So now you've got this massive amount of data. Could you go through and give us an idea of how many, what the process is for leaving a salary and how much data you have?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have, when I checked this morning, just under 2,500 physician salary submissions. So that's really great. And we try to make it as easy as possible for a doctor to hop on the website and add a salary. So there's really just, it's kind of a three-page, kind of a three-step process. You go in there, there's no login required. We do ask for an email at the very end, but we really just collect about 10 to 12 data points in total. And we try to make that process as easy as possible, right? And there's call to action, add a salary, submit your salary, buttons all over the website. But we really want to make it as easy as possible on the physician to add this data, right? Because it's kind of a big ask to ask a doctor to, hey, stop what you're doing, take some time to contribute to the mission. But we found it's been really great. We've been getting a really great submission rate on our website.
And how are you prompting people? Because I know you said you had that residency review. Beyond that, how are you getting more people to come on there and leave their salaries?
Yeah, absolutely. So getting a lot of traffic just organically from SEO, secondarily on my Twitter X, and then I just recently started up a TikTok account about 2 weeks ago. So trying to drive traffic from all directions. And I think the biggest thing that I found is that every once in a while I'll have a tweet that'll, at least in my world, go semi-viral. That'll just drive a ton of salary submissions, right? And I think those tend to be the discussion points that really drive home or resonate with a physician.
Can you give us an example? I want to pull your X up right now. Start taking a look.
Yeah, yeah, no, I was just looking at it. So one of the more recent ones was, let me take a look. Just so the amount of Medicare reimbursement, right?
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. I've been digging into this world more and more. Insane.
Yeah, and I think this will really resonate with your particular audience. So I did a little bit of research on the Medicare fee schedule. And if you look at what Medicare was paying physicians in 2015 compared to 2025, it's actually gone down about 10%, right? So in 2015, the Medicare fee schedule conversion factor, and this is public, data available online at the aamc.org, was about $35.93. 10 years later, it's gone down to $32. And so you can imagine, nothing else in this, economy is going down by 10% over a decade, right?
Yeah, and to adjust for inflation.
Exactly, right? So like inflation wise, inflation has actually gone up about 30 to 34% during that same time period.
Oh my God.
So we have physicians that, if you have a private practice, your overhead, your fixed costs are increasing by about 34%. Meanwhile, one of your biggest contributors of revenue is decreasing by 10%.
It's insane. I wonder what the rationale behind that is for the insurance companies. Just the hard squeeze, right? Just
I think
too much
so,
power.
right? And I think there's such a behemoth. If you look at, when you consider like big players in the medical world, you have the insurance giants and then you have Medicare.
Yeah. And that's my dream. That's one of the reasons I work with so many functional medicine and private practice doctors, and a lot of them are going cash based, which is scary, dangerous, and yet also empowering. And I think it really shows just the absolute disillusionment that they have with the system and the drive for autonomy and to be able to control their own lives. I mean, my wife and I, we got to the point where we took our insurance down to bare minimum worst case scenario insurance because everything we do nothing's covered. We go to chiropractor and functional medicine and an osteopath or a DO, and none of it's covered under our insurance, like what we had. I'm also a military veteran, so I get VA health care. So I was like, well, now I just need it for wife and kids. Like, and they come right into the chiropractor with us. We do the little family plan and everything like that. And if we have questions, I broke a rib about 3 weeks ago. I'm just getting over it now. I didn't have to go to the doctor. I went to him, and he's got an X-ray machine. And I was like, hey, I know this is like a weird outside the box question. I'm like, but I got elbowed playing basketball. Like, could you just check this out for me? He's like, and he, poked around a little bit. I was like, I think that feels like a floating rib. And so he took me in the back, did a little X-ray, and he's like, yeah, you broke your rib. I was like, oh man.
Yeah, this
But yeah,
cash-based model
I
is
mean,
really something that's really fascinating to me. So I actually have an accounting background. I have my CPA. And when I was in college, one of my first accounting courses, we actually did a case study on a physician that had a cash-based process. And when you think about it for physicians, right, it really gives them a lot more control, but it also saves them a ton of resource, time, and money. Because I think a lot of the fear going into private practice is you have to hire so many people just to do admin and billing. And a lot of their time is spent dealing with insurance companies. So if you're a straight cash-based, payer physician, you don't maybe need those roles anymore.
yeah, yeah. I think it'd be a fascinating study to dive back into because that's the number one thing that most of the doctors that I'm talking to that are leaving the sick care system and getting into private practice is like one is like, who am I? What do I do? What is my value? Which that's what I helped them out with. The other one is the financial side and like, should I do a monthly subscription service? Should I, just do cash base? Like, and then it comes into, like vaccine kickbacks and this, that, yeah, it's so many things to start incorporating and really thinking about with this. Is that anything that you think your platform might dive into more?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would love to get more data on this. Right now we have kind of three overall overarching practice settings that we're collecting data on or kind of bucketizing our submissions between. So we have hospital employed, academic, and private practice. And the interesting thing about private practice, so physicians that are, owning their own practice or 1099, on average on the platform of the 2,500 physician salary submissions, the median compensation is about $574,000, which is about 20% more than employed physicians.
Hmm.
And so the data that we're seeing so far is suggesting that physicians that do branch out to go off on their own are, taking home about 20% more money.
Yeah, that's significant.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's great, right? And I think that we need more, physician-owned clinics and hospitals because I think and I can't quote the study, but I've seen publications that are proving that, physician-owned practices do have better patient outcomes. I think there's just, having the doctors making the executive decisions is probably better than, an MBA or an admin person.
Yeah, and especially I mean, there's so many people that are great follows on X, but like Dutch Rojas is one of the ones that I really enjoy. And then there's so many of the just the horror stories that you see. Like, the woman needed surgery at 2 o'clock in the morning, but there's nobody from admin there to approve the insurance for it. And you're like, oh my God, like how, imagine like what that's got to feel like as a doctor to be like, this person needs me to save their life and I can't do this right now because I don't have someone to rubber stamp something.
It's so wild to me. And I've also seen videos shared on X making the rounds of, these surgeons that are on the phone with the insurance company trying to get the, anesthesia covered for the entire operation, right? Because insurance is telling the surgeon, how much anesthesia is actually necessary, which is wild to me.
Yeah, I think I mean, actually, I'm good. I try to avoid going off on too many tangents because I can talk about lots of weird stuff. But I feel like there is a massive. I mean, we can all feel like there's awakening that's happening, right? Like we're all kind of seeing, I don't know, the Matrix, the man behind the curtain. We're like trust in institutions, just like across the board. I think it just continues to take like hit after hit after hit each week. I mean, anything from archaeology. Like I love archaeology, and when like that stuff came out about the pyramids and them having like those tubes underneath it, I was like, "How did you guys not know this? Like, how we haven't looked under the ground at all? Like nothing? Like that's we just said, yeah, that we know everything that happened with that, but we didn't like look around."
Yeah, I think AI is only going to help that, right?
Oh
Kind
my
of
gosh,
open
yeah.
up. even more history that we don't even know about today.
Yeah, I find that stuff absolutely fascinating. But I think medicine is the other one that's going to get slammed because the institutional bloat and that the institutional rot. That's like my favorite phrasing around it. That has just created so much bloat and so much inefficiency. It has to swing back the other way, right?
I definitely think you're right, and that's why I think we're seeing this kind of, popularity around salary transparency and just transparent and even transparency in general across different, career paths and different, jobs. I think salary transparency in general is something that, people are opening up to. I'd say 20 years ago it was very taboo to talk about your compensation, and now there are tons of websites and platforms that are specifically to do that.
Hmm, that's interesting. In my chat group with my buddies, we have one room that's called the no filter chat. And in that one, the rule is if you're going to be in this room, you can literally ask anything. Anything, no judgment room.
Well, I love that idea.
Yeah, it's really cool. And there's only like half of my friends are like we got our massive chat that's got 15 of us or something like that. But then there's 5 6 of us in this other one. It's got the no filter chat. But yeah, salary has come up in there. Like how much money do you make? Like, and it's interesting. These are people that I've known for 20 years, right? But it's very fun to think about having the we'll say the death of the ego enough to where like I could say that to my friends or ask my friends or enough to feel that way. So the with salary transparency, what are the use cases that you're seeing for this for more like the private practice? I want to focus more on the private practice side than probably the hospital system because I'm hoping the hospital systems keep dying out here and that we get
Right,
more and more
right.
private practice. But yeah, what are you seeing as far as like use cases?
Yeah, so I actually just released a tool of salary benchmarking, right? And I think the coolest use case right now from Salary Doctor would be able to go on the platform and filter for private practice, and then benchmarking your region, your state, with information down to the city level. What are other clinicians in my field doing? What are they, making? What are they, where are they working? How many years of experience? It's a really powerful tool where you can go in there. If you live in California and near the Los Angeles area, we have a ton of data on that area where you could go in and filter by your specialty or years of experience. And you can also see who's having a good time and who's not having such a good time. I know a lot of your audience is focused on the holistic kind of lifestyle focused specialties. So I grabbed a little data before our call today, and plastic surgery, gastroenterology, and dermatology all score 4.5 out of 5 on our job satisfaction, which really shows you that I think those physicians seem in general pretty happy with their career choice.
Yeah, yeah. The other one that we've been seeing a lot more inbound is actually sports medicine, sports and spine,
Sure.
which I was
Yeah.
also just looking on your site here. I'm seeing a little bit over a 4 on that as well, 4.2.
Yeah, and one of the other data points we collect is yes or no, would you choose this specialty again? And I think we're getting a lot of honest feedback there. And I think that's important, whatever part of the, medicine career path you're on, if you're a medical student, if you're pre-med, residency, because there are physicians that do go back and change specialties. You would think after 8 to 12 years of training, it'd be a very difficult thing to do, but, it's definitely something that we see.
Oh, you just remind me of like a recurring nightmare that I have. I'm a military veteran, and every once in a while I have this horrible dream that I'm back in basic training again, and I just signed up for 3 more years. And I like wake up in a cold sweat and be like, oh my gosh. That's what I got to imagine those doctors would feel like.
So you can appreciate it, right?
Oh my gosh. What so could you just run us through all the data points that you collect on a form?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to start off. I'm just going to pull up a copy of the form here just so I don't misspeak. But, in general, we're looking for your specialty, how many years of experience, the state that you work in, the average hours you work per week. And the reason we ask for that data point is we want to calculate the average compensation per hour because there's some specialties like emergency medicine, for example, where that data point might be more relevant. We're going to ask you for the amount of weeks of PTO, what kind of practice setting, as I mentioned, and then would you choose that specialty again? And I definitely think there's more data points we could ask for, But right now we're trying to balance asking for too much too soon and also kind of curious, what are doctors and physicians interested in? What is the most useful data point to collect?
Yeah, and with have you been kind of testing out the email list, asking them that what type of information they would want to see?
Yeah, yeah, we definitely get feedback too. Every time after you submit a salary or compensation report, we automatically route you through the feedback loop because we're trying to always continuously improve the platform. I think there's definitely some other interesting data points, whether, looking at your degree, if you're an MD or a DO, the allopathic or osteopathic. We could even look into gender. I think that would be interesting data points.
Yeah, yeah, you're really just scratching the surface with this thing in a lot of ways.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And data is so powerful. And when it comes to transparency, I think the more data we collect, the better, right? Because the website, the tool, it's only as useful as it is for doctors.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sitting here, the wheels are spinning in my head of like you put amount of time you have to spend in school versus
Yeah.
versus salary versus this versus that versus area. Yeah, I mean that you could literally. I'm really big on people kind of having a plan in their life because I never had a plan in my life, and I think it would be helpful. So,
Well,
but I
yeah, I
can
mean,
only
you can
imagine
always
that.
make that.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can always make that 5 year, plan, and I feel like they usually end up changing, about halfway through, maybe.
yeah, yeah. But even it's so cool to think that that a medical student could go to your website, look at a city, look at a specialty, and have that type of data to inform their career. That's so cool.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a good point as far as how much training is required, right? Because I think that's also relevant, right? I mean, by the time you get out of medical school, you might be looking at, do I really want to do 7 years of residency, right? Or would I rather do a specialty that might require 3 to 4 years?
Yeah. Is well, you were talking about the 5 year plan here. What is the 5 year plan for salary doctor?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would eventually love to, so the goal here over the next 5 years is to become the number one platform for collecting physician data, right? I don't think there exists a better or one-stop shop for physician salary data. So the data will always be transparent, it will always be free. And I think looking forward, we want to expand it to other, you know, points of medicine. So it could be medical residence, I think would be the next logical step. And I think with Review My Residency, I have a pretty good email network for that. But I think eventually it'll, I want to transition just away from only having data to also building a community. I would love for Salary Doctor to become a place where, attendings, physicians, and residents can all come in and discuss, everything related to physician compensation and really, have this kind of, like the discussion thread that you mentioned with you and your friends. I would love to have a, kind of a forum or a community like that on Salary Doctor. I think that'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah, especially with I love the fact that it's anonymous. Would that be an option within it to keep
Yeah, I think that's
anonymity?
important, right? I think, kind of what you're describing sort of reminds me of just Reddit in general. And so I think there'd be some cool things you could do, right? You could tag, every user. It would be an anonymous user, but you could tag them as, a third year medical resident, or you could be, an emergency medicine physician. You could be a 5 year experienced general surgeon. So I think it'd be important and helpful to have, each username kind of tagged with some flair of like, what is your specialty? Are you academic? Are you private practice? Are you DO? Are you MD? Kind of drive the discussion and let people have kind of different breakout rooms.
It's really cool. I love that. Anytime that there's I was just gonna say anytime that there's an opportunity to we're also like disconnected now, right? We're more interconnected than ever, but also all very disconnected. And anytime that you could have so many people that are same career path, same daily operations, fighting the same enemies, right? Like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. There's so much value in being able to connect with people that live a very similar life to you, right? Whether that's your career or your hobbies. I think that's one reason why Reddit is very popular, and you've
hmm
these different kind of subreddits or communities that you can dive into and really just kind of share knowledge and learn from each other.
I never got into Reddit enough. I did it for like a year, and then and then I got pulled into
I
something
think
else.
it's
But I did love Reddit.
Yeah, I think Reddit is great, but it can definitely like take you down some rabbit holes. Like I think, of all the social media that I can think of, Reddit can be very, very time consuming if you let it be.
You start on doctor compensation and suddenly you're into 9/11 and
And the conspiracy theories and
yeah,
everything.
Tartaria.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think the craziest
exactly.
ones. Flat Earth. There you go. Suddenly you're talking flat Earth, and you're like,
Yeah, no, Reddit is definitely a late night, like I can't sleep, so I'm gonna go on this app right now.
oh, that's great. That's great. So, what about you? You personally, like, I know you said you're married to a doctor, so you get that firsthand experience. But what is it that you like to do when you're not comparing doctor salaries and coding websites?
Yeah, no, it's kind of created, probably my most time intensive hobby right now. But outside of that, I live in the Midwest, so it's summertime right now. It's beautiful outside. I love to play tennis. I think it's one of those sports similar to golf, which I'm not good at all. But you can play into old age. You can play year round. You can play indoors. You can play outdoors. So tennis is really cool. And then I lived in Kansas City, Missouri for a little while. And when I was down there, I sort of picked up pickleball, which has obviously become very, very popular in the US now. But I think both of those kind of racket sports are pretty fun. And, you can practice solo, but you can play with two people, four people. It's a good time. What about you? Where do you find yourself?
Oh, well, I have two very young children, so I find myself mostly chasing them around. So I have a 3-year-old and a 7-month-old, and the 7 month is man, this kid scoots all over. So he hasn't figured out like how to crawl, but he's just low crawling everywhere. And then
That's
I also
great.
just like you're speaking, I play a ton of golf. That's my dream at some point. Like I love marketing because it's truly like the most fun part of running a business. Like my least favorite part of running a business is running business. My favorite part of running a business is being like helping people figure out like what's cool about them, what's unique about them, how to display that in a way that's going to build an emotional connection with people like quickly and display value quickly. Like that's what's cool to me about it. I really love psychology and sports psychology, and
Mm,
especially that kind of leads us back around to golf, which is what I feel is the most direct connection to success is mental fortitude, mental strength, because it's you and a ball. Nothing anybody else does has any impact on how well you score. You're also competing against nature, which I find it's one of the reasons that I enjoy working with the functional medicine side so much is because I feel there's a real dichotomy in, especially in the medical industry, of people that kind of see the world as, we'll say, divinely created. We should be in
hmm
balance with nature. We should kind of understand that versus people that see it as humans try to control it. That's kind of how I see the pharmaceutical industry of like just chemically, chemical Jenga, right? Like, we'll stick this one in.
This doesn't work. Try that pill. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so I love being outside. So that's why you say you're in the Midwest. I mean, it's so gorgeous out there during summertime. I'm from Buffalo, New York, so summertime is awesome. Wintertime is horrible. It's also why I don't live in Buffalo anymore. But
And I think golf is such a good excuse to go out and like travel. You can take your golf clubs with you and you get to see some of the most beautiful courses, some of the most beautiful landscape, right?
my wife had no idea, and then she came out. She's like, "Wait a minute, so you're just like some deer cut across the fairway?" She's like, "Wait a minute, so you're just like hanging out in nature, drinking a few beers, listening to music, and hitting a little ball?" She's like, "This is fantastic." I'm like, "Yeah, it's pretty great." Are you? This is gonna be kind of a loaded question for you. Are you optimistic about the future, about where things are going, especially considering you're seeing the medical industry firsthand?
Yeah, I think we have to be right. And I think, am I optimistic? I think there's a lot of battles that need to be fought in healthcare and in medicine and, kind of turn the boat around where we're giving physicians more power and autonomy and ability to make the decisions that they need to make. I think, from my perspective, from the data that I've collected, it seems like we're, seeing insurance and larger hospital organizations making more of these healthcare decisions that, in my opinion, doctors should be making. But overall, yeah, I'd say I am optimistic because, when creating this platform that relies entirely on other people, other doctors to take the time to submit their data, I think it shows that people care. And I think as long as physicians care about improving their situation and, getting more autonomy, I think things will improve. Definitely. What about you? What are you kind of seeing from your vantage view?
Well, uh, I live in the Google Trends world because it's always keyword research and blog topics and finding these things. Searching for functional holistic medicine for no insurance practice, like medical care, things like that. All of those are exponentially up since 2020. I think. I mean, I'm a good Christian guy. I believe that God controls things in ways that we could just never understand, and that's kind of how I've come to look at COVID at this point. Is like, yeah, it was horrible for everybody. I was living in California at the time. I was like the main reason I don't live in California anymore because I was like, you people lost your mind.
Yeah, it's a wild time. It's crazy to think it was already 5 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm also happy that life is normal. Like I was worried that this is like the new normal was COVID life, and I was like, which
It could have been. I think in a different reality that definitely.
I love thinking about different timelines. That's I'm a weird dude like that. It's kind of you do.
So yeah, I got a question for you too on the functional health. So I'm curious, we are seeing, it sounds like more, Google Trend data that's showing evidence of more physicians going down this route. And I'm curious if it is there, certain specialties or physicians, or is it, physicians later in their career, maybe earlier in their career that might be considering this change?
That's a great question. So can't really extrapolate this through data, but I can give you personal experience with it. I have a significant number of MDs, or some even that had a specialty. One was like a podiatrist that was like, "Hey, I believe in this functional side more," and they're helping with gut health and things like that, and nutrition, and because root cause healing is root cause healing, right? Like if I think that's the big difference between the allopathic method and anybody listening to this. I am by no means an expert in this. This is just strictly what I've gleaned from conversations that I've had for the last few years. But there's the allopathic method, cut you open or throw a pill at you, and then there's the you kind of throw everything else into the functional medicine because it's even nutrition falls into it, naturopathic, chiropractic, manipulation. It kind of all falls under this like, hey, don't cut me open and don't give me a chemical. And I think that is just much more appealing to people right now as we're I believe pendulums swing, right? Like we swung pretty hard in the 72 vaccines for a kid by the time they're 6 years old or something like that, right? Like that's a lot. That's a lot to look at a human being and say like you are this deficient. Like you haven't done a single thing and yet you are very wrong. Something is very wrong with you. And I think that the rationale that a lot of people are having now is like a little wacky, right? Like, and so it's kind of swinging back the other way. So who knows what it'll do in the future? But I also believe that just like we were talking about with the institutions, I think power structures need to be leveled a bit. And I think that's also one of the incredible things with AI is like from a marketing standpoint, private practice down the street has just as much power as a hospital now. I mean, you don't have they have a multi-million-dollar marketing budget, but if between social media, good SEO, utilizing AI in the right ways, having systems for generating client feedback and being able to display it online and in useful ways.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And it's like AI almost sort of levels the playing field, right? Because now you have the power of, what would otherwise cost you two to three admin people, perhaps.
Yeah, and I I kind of look at the billing and the what people are dealing with insurances that we were talking about earlier. Is like it's going to go one of two ways. Either people are going to be like, "Fuck this," or people are going to be like, "Oh, AI can solve that with this." Like it's because what we're doing right now is not sustainable, and I can't imagine that this model will be around for another 3 to 5 years.
It is interesting, when we were talking about Medicare earlier, just on my Twitter feed, I'm getting a lot of comments and a lot of replies that, from doctors saying they left the Medicare
Hmm.
paying option a long time ago,
Hmm.
right? And so I think there's physicians that are just waking up to it today, and I think there's other doctors that have, saw the writing on the wall 5, 10 years ago.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I'm cautiously optimistic about this administration versus past ones. Not because I'm Republican or Democrat, but it's like, okay, at least these people like aren't funded by insurance companies and big pharma, right? Like at least that's not where their paychecks are coming from. They don't have like massive lobbyists behind it. I'm like, so maybe we'll get something different, you know. So it makes me like cautiously optimistic that from a regulatory standpoint, you know, people will also be freed from what I do see as like truly like a cancer on the American society is like how broken the healthcare system is.
And I'm kind of curious, kind of, to turn your question around, kind of how you see things, right? Are you sort of optimistic that, things get better from here? Do they get worse?
I think I've got kids. I have to be optimistic. Like if I if I didn't have kids, maybe I wouldn't be as. No, I'm raising little warriors, right? Like I'm not raising. We'll just say it this way: my kids aren't getting 72 shots before they're 6. And I'll say it. Sure, they're gonna get a few. Don't go blowing up the comments, but maybe. But like also like I think that pendulum is gonna swing pretty hard back in the other direction. I don't think. I think like if you looked at it politically, I would say you don't have. And maybe this is me being chauvinist and misogynist, but I think that you need strong men to lead a society. I think strong women certainly can, but I think you couldn't do it with just strong women. You could get by at least with just strong men historically, right? And I feel like there is not enough strength in the men, and that's why I take a lot of pride in like raising. I like to say little warriors, right? Like I'm raising little kids that wake up and want to go outside and roll around in the dirt, and like it's 7:30 in the morning, and I I'm coming downstairs and the kids already covered head to toe in mud. I'm like, dude, what are you doing, man? You took a bath last night. You got to go to school.
Yeah,
you know, so optimistic, yes, but I also have this feeling that a lot of people aren't gonna make it. And what I mean by that is like mentally, maybe not physically, but I feel like between the education system, between the medical system, between like the institutions that are dying, the reason that they are dying is also the same reason that these people won't mentally be able to adjust and adapt to the coming world.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are changing, right? I mean, we're really kind of on this cusp of AI, right? And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like a second awakening from, the internet boom.
All right, so you said you mess around with AI. How crazy the conversations do you have with AI? How deep do they
Oh,
go?
I love it. When I think back, I think it was like 2022, the first time I tried Chat GPT.
Mm.
And I think when you look back, it doesn't feel like it's changed that much. But when I think about the capabilities that it had just 2 years ago, it's come leaps and bounds, right? I mean, ChatGPT right now can generate an image. So when I went to create my TikTok profile account, I don't even have to pay for that, right? You just have to go to Upwork. Now I can talk to ChatGPT. It can take my headshot. It can improve it, make it better. But I kind of use ChatGPT as like my own kind of partner in business, I would say, for Salary Doctor. I love to bounce ideas off of it and ask it very open-ended questions, right? So if I have an idea of like, hey, should I collect degrees for doctors, right? Whether you're an MD or a DO. And it'll, within 30 seconds, give me a list of 10 pros and cons of why that's good or bad. And it just helps me iterate and keep moving forward. I think it's great though. I mean, it's really like the closest thing you can have to having a business partner that you're not paying for.
You are speaking exactly to how I use it as well. My wife got so sick of me saying like, I wish I had a business partner because I've run this company by myself for 5 years, which it gets lonely, right? It gets lonely and like, why do I have to solve every problem? Why do I have to like come up with every improvement? Why do I have to do this, do that? I use AI a ton, and I never really thought that I would either. I was like, I'm a creative. Like, I mean, my old way of coming up with marketing campaigns was like this is way before kids, but was like I had this wet notepad that it could get wet, and it had like this kind of pencil-y, crayon-y thing I could write on it. But it's cool because like you could literally it could get wet and it wouldn't matter. You could still write on it. But I used to get super high and sit in a hot tub and just think about my clients and be like, oh, that'd be a great idea for that one. And I'd like write the note and I'd like, and now like I interview a client for 30 minutes to an hour, take that transcription, drop it in ChatGPT. This is the ideas I have. I give it like my starting points, my foundations, and I have a marketing plan in 30 minutes. And project
And it's
details.
crazy, like in a lot of these platforms, there's so many of them now, right? But at least, most of them now are developing a memory.
Hmm.
So they have that longer contextual memory of like, hey, last week you mentioned this idea. Are you still working on that? Like it has the memory just like a real person would.
I would say better than a real person.
Yeah. 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 Which can be good and bad, right? I mean, it's probably more difficult to win an argument against AI, right? Because they're never going to forget any little thing that you may have mentioned.
The one thing I will caution people with AI is I had to tell mine, do not assume that I'm right. I was like, I don't want you to just be my cheerleader. I want you to challenge me. I want you to, and you have to tell it that. Otherwise, like, it gets very cheerleadery, at least from like a business partner standpoint. You can do it. Go and yeah, like every idea you have is great. Like, no, tell me if it's shit.
Yeah.
Tell me if it's shit.
100% agree with that. And I think I saw a tweet from Sam Altman that, so the latest version was like glazing people too much. And I had to look up what that term even meant. But yeah, I mean, I think in general, it's made to make you feel good. And so any idea you have is going to be, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And so you kind of have to kind of reevaluate how you prompt or how you ask the AI the question, right? In my experience, I try to keep it as open-ended as possible, or I'll ask it, kind of the reverse, like the opposite of that to see if it really is a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I load it with kind of context, and then I say, "What is your opinion?" Or I say, "Give me like 5 pros, 5 cons. Give me your conclusion." And then that way, I can kind of take it, digest that information a little bit before spitting it out there. I also truly enjoy having like spiritual conversations with it. I'm like, tell me, because as a good God fearing Christian, I like digging into things. I also find it fascinating. Do you know like do you find archaeology and spirituality interesting? Before I start
I haven't
getting too
delved too
big.
much into that, to be honest.
So I'm just going to tell you about my most recent fascination is the Nagamati Library, which was 1945. They found 50 or so books from the Gnostic Christians, which people don't know. It's like early Christianity. Jesus died, and then he came back, and then he left. And then there's a bunch of guys, and they're like, "Oh shit! Like, what do we do?" Right? Essentially. And so you got like Peter and Paul and Thomas and John, and they all have their own spin on what it is. So one sect of it is called the Gnostics. Gnosis just means knowledge, means like the pursuit of knowledge type people. They're a little bit more spiritual. So anyway, they got persecuted because when Rome, we'll say, took on Christianity and used it for so you had when the Roman government took on Christianity as like the state religion, they had to squash out everything else. And so you had the sect of Christianity, which is much more spiritual, the Gnostics. They were essentially destroyed. And so some of their, I guess, probably priests, we will just be general, put a bunch of scrolls into clay pots, hid them in a cave in Nagamati, Egypt, and they were discovered in 1945, 100 years after they were hidden. So anyway, yeah, it's my most recent fascination. So that's why I'm all into the history of it, and also being Christian, like to know that the sect of Christianity. Because I'm also pretty like a fairly spiritual guy. Like I think God divide, science and math is too awesome for not to think that God is a master engineer, scientist, mathematician to incorporate everything into it, right? So like spirituality is just another aspect of that kind of coolness I see with God. So anyway, with all of that, I had these conversations with ChatGPT about the Nagamati library and these new discoveries and the implications of them, and then like looking at things like the Book of Revelation saying like knowledge will everything that is hidden will become uncovered, and you're like, what are you talking about? The Nagamati library, and like having these conversations with ChatGPT, the insight that this AI provides is absolutely mind blowing. Like I am constantly floored and blown away. Because I couldn't have that conversation with anybody else.
I
Never,
think it's
never in a million
great,
years.
right? And you have it in your pocket, right? You have it in your hand. Just access to that deep level of a conversation. You're basically having it with an expert, right? I mean, you're talking to
Right.
someone or something that has, the entire Bible, downloaded and all the other data from 2000 years ago, right? I mean, it just has like endless amounts of data and you can just converse with it. And I think it's even more strange. I've never seen the movie Her, but I've had it recommended
Hmm.
to me so many times. The fact that you can even talk to it, right? It has that, I think it has a feature right now that you can like chat with it back and forth, right? You don't even
Yeah.
have to type to it.
Yeah, I utilize that a lot. My wife has brought up Her a dozen times in the last 6 months when she's me interacting with it. She's like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I use a nice male
That's
voice on there.
okay. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Like, we talk about being optimistic or not, about different things, but that's something with AI. I feel very optimistic about the things that it'll help solve.
Hmm.
When you talk about healthcare or, disease or cancer. But there's also some scary things, right? Of like, do humans, reduce down to, being symbiotic with these machines and, nobody goes outside anymore and we're just talking to these AI girlfriends or AI boyfriends. There's kind of good and bad to both.
Yeah, can't lose yourself.
Right,
You
right.
got to. That is the one thing I will recommend anybody that utilizes AI as that type business partner or that conversationalist is it's an incredible tool. But I have even found myself like, say I want to comment on something on social media. Of course, I'd drop it into AI and be like, yeah, give me the pros and cons of this, the different perspectives on it, write up the script, and then like there's one time I took the script and I like didn't even bother editing it, and I was like, yeah, it knows me so well, and I like started reading it, and I was like, this is not quite right. This is not what I want to say. And you gotta, just ensure you don't lose yourself
Mhm.
in the tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one thing it lacks, right? It doesn't really have a personality. And I think by design, it's very unopinionated and it's very hard to extract, an opinion or a bias out of it. I think, like I said, that's by design. But I think ultimately, as AI becomes more and more popular, I still think, you know, humans will value human connection, right? And so things like golf are always going to be important, right? You're always going to want to go out, get away from AI, go golfing with your buddies. Things like that will probably become more valuable over time.
Yeah, yeah, and especially the rollout of AI agents. I mean, I've got a vision of playing golf 5 days a week now once I have enough AI agents to do my
Right, right.
work. Someday, someday. Well, Tyler, this is absolutely awesome, man. I truly enjoy talking to you, man. You're such a great dude, and I love the platform that you built out. And I see so many great use cases for positively impacting the healthcare space. So, how can people get in touch with you, engage with you, or jump on with what you're doing?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Feel free to follow me. I'm on Twitter at Salary Doctor. But otherwise, I'd say in general, if you're considering going independent or private, or if you just really want to understand like what is your specialty worth, right? Feel free to check out salarydoctor.com. We got a ton of salary data. You can sort by practice type, specialty, region, and more. It's always going to be free and it's 100% backed by real physicians. But yeah, feel free to reach out there. Also, my email is tyler@salarydoctor.com.
That's great, and that's Salary Dr.
Correct. Yes.
Salary Dr. Right
Yep.
on all the platforms. That's great. Well, Tyler, thank you so much, man, for cutting out a little bit of time of your day. I really, really appreciate it, and I look forward to
All
collaborating
right.
with you on some things in the future.
Cool, Paul. This was a good time.
Yo, Flexner's dead, the Rockefellers too. The AMA's a relic, we're coming for you. Thought you buried the truth, left it in the dirt. But functional medicine's back and it's putting in work. Flexner's report, yeah, that was the start of a system built to tear real healing apart. Rockefellers cashed in, big pharma got paid, while the AMA kept the whole game rigged and played. But guess what? Your empire's starting to crack. We're taking it back, no more knives in our backs. Raw milk in the fridge, fresh veggies on the plate. Regenerative farms, yeah, we're changing the state. Phoenix rising, we're burning it down. Functional medicine taking the crown. Big agro, big pharma, your time is through. We're sovereign, independent, and coming for you. No more processed lies, no more fake food. We're building a future where our kids can bloom. roots in the air, regenerative ag where the soil's alive. Holistic health warriors, we're ready to thrive. No more pills for the pain, no more chemical chains. We're breaking addictions, rewiring brains from the clutches of greed. We're yanking them free. This is health for the people, not monopoly. Yo, big pharma, you thought you had it locked, but your house of cards is about to get rocked. We're talking raw milk, fresh greens, no stress. Functional medicine's here and we're bringing our best. Holistic health, yeah, it's taking the lead. While your system's dying, consumed by greed. We're warriors for health, sovereign and strong, and we're building a world where our kids belong. Phoenix rising, we're burning it down. Functional medicine taking the crown. Big agra, big pharma, your time is through.